All right, I'm trying to get this going. I think I have the right stream this time, unlike last time, unfortunately. I had to switch streams and then probably lost a few people in that transition. I'm just testing it out on my iPad to see when it's going to pop up here. Oh. Well, apparently the iPad's showing an ad. Let's see. Okay, so I'm seeing myself. Looks like pretend the stream is broken. All right, it looks like it's working now. And I'm going to keep it running on my iPad so I can see it and make sure it doesn't drop out. And today, before we get started, so I have everything back up how it was last time, including my CPUs. They're up chugging away at 100%. So YouTube is showing that I'm not sending enough video to maintain smooth streaming. So let me know if you have any issues. I might be able to change some settings midstream to make it better if things do drop out. But I think I have it working pretty well. It's all the same as it was last week. I have on GitHub, Geerling Guy, jeffgeerling.com. So the last thing we did last week after setting up the code base was created a local Docker development environment using this Docker compose file. We got everything set up and installed, and we have this beautiful new website, which looks nothing like the old website, but we're going to change that. I don't think we'll get to this point today, but we're going to get as far as we can. That was the end of last stream, and today I'm going to start doing the actual migration process. Now, I admit I cheated a tiny bit, and I read a little bit of the documentation on Drupal.org just so I'd have a little bit of a starting point. And I wanted to go over, before I get into the actual migration process, I made some props out of my kids' Play-Doh. This is actually not Play-Doh, it's called aroma dough because they're allergic to, two of them are severely allergic to wheat, and Play-Doh would probably end up putting them in the hospital. So this is aroma dough, and it's the same thing as Play-Doh. And this is Drupal 6. Drupal 6 had an upgrade process that was destructive to the database and would cause things to be moved around in the database. So the idea was you'd back up your database. If you didn't back it up, that would be a pretty bad idea because the upgrade process changes the database, and you cannot go back if you don't have a backup. You'd back up your database, you'd go to like update.php or upgrade.php or something like that. And hopefully this is the right way, yeah. So that's a 6. And then the updater or upgrader would take that database and it would squish it around and do all kinds of crazy things. And then at the end of it, you would have a Drupal 7 site. And the Drupal 7 site might have a few bugs and problems and things because there's never such a thing as a perfect upgrade with Drupal. I've upgraded a site from 4 to 5, 5 to 6, and 6 to 7, and each one of those required some tweaks and things, especially for missing modules. But you'd go from 6 to 7 like that. When Drupal 7 came out, the migrate modules became very robust and a preferred way to upgrade a lot of sites because a lot of Drupal migrations had to be very customized like that. So for Drupal 7, a lot of people would migrate a Drupal 7 site to a Drupal 7 site. Some people would migrate complex Drupal 6 sites to Drupal 7 using migrate. And that was kind of becoming the preferred way for big sites. Early on in Drupal 8's development cycle, they were starting to do upgrades the same way. But as time went on, they realized that the data model of Drupal had changed enough, and the way that the Drupal modules and things were written were different enough that that was not going to cut it anymore, that simple upgrade process. A little aside here from my personal experience, I actually wrote upgrades for the Honeypot module from Drupal 7 to 8 before this whole decision to use migrations came to be. So Honeypot had an upgrade path, and then the decision was made to switch from doing that upgrade path to doing migrations. And to this day, there's no migration path for Honeypot. Luckily, it's an easy enough module to migrate your settings manually, but Someday we'll have that migration done, and then you'll be able to upgrade from Drupal 7 to 8 and have honeypot configuration come across. Actually, that might have even been done recently by somebody else. I don't know. I'm the maintainer of the module, and I don't know. I don't remember what features I've merged in the past year. So anyway, with Drupal 7, the idea for upgrading a Drupal 7 site to 8 is instead of Drupal kind of squishing that database and changing things, you'd keep your Drupal 7 site running, and then you'd have a Drupal 8 site, which we just built. You can see it on my screen here. You'd have a Drupal 8 site running side by side, and then you'd have Drupal say, hey, I know all about this old Drupal 7 stuff, and I know all about the new Drupal 8 stuff. I'm going to create a migration from one to the other. With Drupal 8, it creates that migration for you, and then it migrates the content. I don't have any content to migrate here. I'll take the old junk from the Drupal 6 site that went to 7, and the content kind of just migrates its way over to 8. There's my wonderful aroma dough, Play-Doh prop section. I'm not going to be doing that again because that stuff is kind of disgusting and probably has been in many hands and things that I don't even want to know what they touched besides boogers and things. Anyways, so that's the difference with Drupal 6, well, Drupal 4, 5, 6, 7 to Drupal 7 to 8, and it'll be the same way for 8 to 9, I'm pretty sure. Where you're going to do a migration and you have the two databases side by side, and Drupal kind of moves the things over for you. That's the goal. Real world, sometimes things are not that way. Another thing that you'd probably want to do before you even start the migration process, especially for a bigger site, is look at your current site, know what the content is in it, know where the content goes, know how the content's related. So for this site, it's actually a pretty simple site. I think there's 3 content types. There's blog post, page, and project. And the blog posts are pretty simple. They have a body field, a title field, and some pictures and things. And then the pages are pretty simple. They're same as blog post. And projects is the only one that has anything in particular that's a little more complex, but it's not really that complex, I think. Well, I have the field UI module turned off. But if I add a project, I'll show you what fields are on it. My fans are spinning up feverishly now. Hi, Prabhu, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. So there's a title, a highlight checkbox that lets it show on the front page or other highlight areas. Completion date. A lot of my projects, I don't get to put in a completion date until far along the project. A type of project, and I think that might be taxonomy, or it might just be a multi-value text field. URL field. Highlights, which is multi-value text field, and then image field, and then a description, which is a body field. So this is the most complicated content type, and honestly, I've considered removing the project section from my site because when I built this site years ago, I intended on having it be my CV or my resume and all that kind of stuff, and I don't really update the projects that much, to be honest. I think these, Drupal VM was from 2014 or something. A lot of these things I haven't updated in a long time. Some of these websites, I think this website is not even hosted by the same group that I set them up with. Anyways, so that's the most complicated content type. And there's a couple taxonomies. The project type, so project type is a taxonomy, and then tags on blog posts. And there's a few views on the site. To be honest, I've never migrated a view in Drupal, so we'll see how that goes. But there's the blog view, which is this page, the blog page. There's a project view. I think the home page might be a view, or actually this is just blocks, placed blocks here. So these are 3 blocks on the home page. And there's the content admin view, which is part of Drupal Core. So it's a pretty simple site on the content structure, but you need to know your content structure for 2 reasons. One is when Drupal does its automated migration, it might miss something, and you need to know, this checkbox is missing, or this relationship is not correct, or something like that. And you might need to do a little programming to fix that. Hopefully not, but with more complex sites that might happen, or if you use a special module like hierarchical something relationship, whatever, that module might need a little extra help to get the content migrated correctly and related correctly. Another thing is the modules that you use on the site. So this site actually is a little complex. I have a number of modules on it, contributed modules that do things like for spam prevention, I have Honeypot and Clean Talk. For what else? There's a couple other modules that I use for special parts of the site. I think I use the what is the metadata module that you can set SEO options for meta tags. I use that for SEO for Google. This site actually ranks pretty highly for a lot of search terms. So that's one thing that I have to keep in mind, is I want to make sure that I don't lose that high ranking for certain search terms when I upgrade the site by losing things like meta tag information for certain articles. And some of my reviews, I have star ratings and prices and things like that. So those are things I don't want to lose. There are some modules that help with that. I think if I search for Drupal 8 upgrade status, there's at least 1 or 2 modules. I think upgrade status, and maybe update status. No, the update status is built into Core. So upgrade status, this module checks if you have projects available in Drupal 8. So I'm going to grab this module really quick and show it to you. So this is, you might notice that this site says Jeff Geerling Dev. This is running locally on my laptop on port 81, Jeff Geerling Dev. This is my Drupal 7 site. So I'm going to download this module. I will admit that I use tarballs for my Drupal 7 sites still. That's just something I started doing in like 2010 or 9, or I forget when I set up this first site. But I started with tarballs and I still use tarballs, or sometimes Drush, but I'm going to download this module and pop it into my code base. There it is. Sites, all modules. This is how we used to do it in the old days, before Composer came out. The sad thing is it's actually a lot faster to do this, because I just downloaded and installed a module. But module dependencies and things can't be handled that way. So I pop that in there. I'm going to go to my modules page. I could also use Drush to do this, but it's a little easier to show visually if I have it up on here. I'll make this a little bigger too. Drupal is so fast when you're running in Docker for Mac with a shared folder and you load the modules page. That was sarcasm, by the way. Let's see. So that was called upgrade status. Turn that on. By the way, if you're ever using a Drupal 7 site and you want to have a nice little module interface like this, I forget what the module is that provides this, but there's a module that makes your modules page not so annoying to manage. I forget what it's called. User interface, maybe? No, I don't know. Nope. Nope. All right, so I'm still waiting for this module to be installed. And as someone mentioned last week, using an environment like DDEV with NFS instead of the native Docker shared folders would be a bit faster. You can see the CPUs are already overloaded by quite a bit on this Mac right now, just from doing this live stream, but also using Docker. Man, my voice is kind of gone here. Let me get a drink of water. Using Docker for Mac, I'm using the native volumes, a read-write volume that lets it read across. Docker for Mac has really bad file access speed for kind of loading up files out of cache. And that's when you load the modules page in Drupal, it reads every single module file on the system, which for this site, there's probably a few thousand files or something. So that's why it's a bit slow. Still waiting for it, still waiting. And I want to go back and see the upgrade status module. Man, that's slow. So do I just go to, it checks, how do I get to that page? If you go to reports, available updates, upgrade status. Okay, so once this is done, we can go to the site reports section in Drupal and check what modules are available or not available, that kind of thing. Hopefully, for my site, all the modules that I use will be available, if this ever loads. While it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and also get to the Drupal.org documentation for migration. Drupal 7 to 8 upgrade migration, something like that. Upgrading from Drupal 6 or 7 to Drupal 8. So here is the upgrading guide. This is a documentation guide on Drupal.org. And as I said earlier, the way that this works, I use these wonderful little illustrative Play-Doh or Omodo balls to show you that process. With Drupal 6 and 7, it would take the database and kind of squish it around into Drupal 7. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't, but it was kind of annoying in that if it didn't work, you were stuck with that database and you kind of had to fix things yourself, or you just start over again from scratch. With this new migration process, whenever something goes wrong, you can just tweak the configuration for the migration and then rerun it, or you can roll back the content and redo it again. So it's a little bit of a cleaner process overall, even though it's a little more heavyweight in terms of you have to have two databases running to be able to do the migration. So for Drupal 6 and 7, in this case, a Drupal 7 site will have its database. We're going to migrate the configuration across to Drupal 8, and we're going to migrate the content. And I think what I'll do is do it separately because the configuration will help me get half of the way there, giving me things like the site slogan and things like that, and the fields that I need and all that. And then the content will come across, and then we'll start theming and things like that. But fingers crossed, this could be pretty simple because I'm using mostly core stuff. There's only a couple fields in the site that I think the URL field might be a special field that was a contrib project in D7 and it might have a core module in D8, but we'll see how that works. So we're going to do the upgrade to Drupal 8 using Drush because it's a lot more flexible, gives us a lot more control, and what I like the most is that we could automate this process. As I said earlier, the more you can make into a command that does everything for you, like I can run this command to reinstall the site, the better off you're going to be because you can redo it and start from scratch each time. So I'm going to go to this guide, upgrade to Drupal 8 using Drush, and I cannot believe this is still loading. Let me see if another page will load on here. If I can get to the reports page. So upgrade using Drush. We already added Drush, I believe. I can check that if I go into the code base and look at the JSON file and find Drush. Yeah, Drush is there. So I have Drush on the site already. And then I can check what version of Drush I have. I'm going to go over to my jeffgeerling.com code base and say Drush-version, but it's actually in vendor bin Drush dash version, something like that. So 10.2.0. That's funny. I'm running this on PHP 7.2, I think, so this function was deprecated in admin menu. There's probably an open issue for that on Drupal.org. So if I go here and go to, what was it, available updates, looks like that page finally loaded, maybe. And man, this is slow. Shouldn't be this slow, but I'm guessing it's this slow because my CPU is being eaten alive by streaming this thing. Might be time for me to upgrade the old laptop. It's not too old, it's a 2016 model, but anyway. Okay, upgrade status. So this is where I'll go to check what modules are available to upgrade. Last check never. Target version of Drupal Core is 8. And check manually. I'll do that. And it's checking all these different things. Oh, I also use the code filter module, which I'm looking to replace that anyways because I've used it forever and it hasn't really been maintained since like 5 years ago. This is the right module, right? Okay, so it looks like Drupal Core is good. Advanced aggregation is good. I use that because that helps with page load times by aggregating CSS and JS files and compressing them really well. Anti-spam is what I use for my comments. It does a really good job in tandem with Honeypot to block spam. CTools is not, I don't need it because it's in Core. That was just a dependency of views, I think. CK Editor is in Core. I actually don't use CK Editor anymore. I should probably remove it from the site. But oh well. Color box, I don't even know if I use that anywhere. But it's there, so we'll be able to upgrade to it. Code filter, like I said, I've been looking to move away from that, so I might look at what other options are available as we do the migration. The date module is in Core. Entity API is part of Core now. Entity views attachment, I'm guessing I use that for a view somewhere. Probably on like the project page itself or something like that. So there is a version for that. We'll see how that goes. Facet API, it goes over to facets. So part of the last part of this process will probably be setting up Apache Solr. I actually, the Solr search on my site, if I go to a blog post, let me go to actualjeffgeerling.com. One of the things that gives me some of the best bang for the buck on the site in terms of SEO and keeping people on the site is I have Apache Solr look at content on the page on every blog post on my site, and I have this further reading section at the bottom. And you'd be amazed how many people will click through these links and stay on the site and keep reading, and that gives a lot of session stickiness to people. This site, I actually don't have advertising on it really. I have some affiliate links maybe. And that's actually a good plug right below me on YouTube. If you want to see these streams in the future, or if you want to subscribe to my other content, hit that subscribe button. That's such a cliche thing to say on YouTube, but that's the best way to be able to know when these things are coming up. But anyway, these links will keep people reading more content on the site. And if you have a metric that you need to achieve of people staying on your site or spending more time reading or things like that, this is one of the best ways is to have good related content related to each thing. So if you see this is a migration related thing with Drupal and all that, and the links that Solr helps pick up is a couple things about a mid-camp session, about another post having to do with this series, and how to build your own Raspberry Pi cluster. So using the tags on the post down here, using the title of the post and the content in the post, Solr has picked up these as related references. So that's one of the things that I'll be doing at the end of this migration is resetting that up. There's no way to migrate this block and exactly what's in it. So I'll have to figure out how to do that in Solr for Drupal 8 with the search API suite. Global redirect, I think some of the features are already in Core that I'll need. Honeypot, hey look, there's a version of that. I maintain that module, so I've been making sure that that's ready to go. The insert module, I use that when I create blog posts. Instead of having a WYSIWYG and I drag photos into it or something like that, I upload an image to an image field and then I click the insert button to put it in the post. I might or might not keep it that way, but I might keep it that way just to keep it simple for this migration. Libraries API, I think I only use that because it's required by CK Editor or something like that. Link is in Core. Markdown module, I use Markdown to write everything, so it's good to know that there's a version for Drupal 8. Module filter, I don't really need that anymore in Drupal 8 because the new Core module page is a little more usable. Path Auto, I do use that a lot, so I'm glad that that's out and stable now for Drupal 8. Redirect, I have probably a few thousand redirects because every time I migrate my website, I make sure that all of the links from the old site work on the new site or redirect to the link on the new site. That's something that's important to do to keep from having link rot. Like, there's a lot of links where people will come in from Google through a Google reference, or they'll come in from a link from an old blog post somewhere else. And that's a substantial amount of traffic on my site. So if those old links die when I do a migration, when I upgrade to Drupal 8, then I'm going to lose all that traffic over time. So I don't want to do that. So redirect model is going to be very important to make sure that the upgrade for it goes well. So I'm going to make sure that I have that content in there. And actually, as I'm going through here, I'm going to go to my repository and make a new issue. This will be the first issue to make sure that ensure redirects are migrated into Drupal 8 site. And I'm going to leave the issue body empty, but that's something that I really want to make sure. It's something that if you don't look for it, and if you don't remember to look for it, you're going to forget about it. And then you're going to launch your new site and notice that the traffic starts dying down for no reason. One of the reasons could be if you forget, oh, I had all these redirects that would put people on the right page, and now Google's seeing 404s and Google's losing that traffic for me. So that's one thing that I want to make sure I don't miss out on. And since I talked about it a minute ago, I'll also create an issue, create related, is it related articles or something? What was it? jeffgeerling.com. And if I go to a blog post, go to the bottom, create further reading block with 3 related blog posts on the bottom of blog post page. So later on, I'll fill in the details for these and say like how it's set up in Drupal 7, maybe maybe add a screenshot or something. And for a larger migration process, if this site had 50 content types and all kinds of other stuff, I would be creating lots of issues for each of these individual items. And I'd probably have a project or two, like one project would be the redirect migration, and one project would be the solar stuff, and I'd have many issues under it. But for this site, it's going to be a little bit simpler. But I just want to not forget about those things because they are very important for this site. Search API pages, that's just used for the search results page. I'll probably figure out a better way to do that in Drupal 8, or maybe that's still the best way for a simple search page. Simple mail, I use that to send myself emails from the site. So anytime there's a comment on the site, it goes into a moderation queue and it emails me with a couple links. Simple mail is a module I made that just makes it really easy to send email programmatically. I might or might not need that. Stage file proxy, which is currently not working, probably because I'm on port 81. It lets you load images locally. I don't really need that at all, but it's nice for local development to make your site look nice. Text list formatter, I don't even know what I use that for, but there it is. Tokens in Drupal Core. I didn't realize it wasn't in Core in Drupal 7. Views is in Core. XML sitemap. So this one will probably require a little bit of setup work too. And I'm going to make another issue for that. GitHub, Geerling guy, jeffgeerling.com. I should probably leave this open. I'll leave it open in a separate tab. New issue. Whoops. Make sure XML sitemap is generated the same as with Drupal 7. All right, so I have 3 issues there that we got just from looking through here. There's a couple modules like code filter. I'll make a new issue. Determine best alternative to code filter for Drupal 8 code snippets. Note, must also be able to either convert or display code snippets beginning with. This is just something I know is going to be an issue. So for the code filter module, you can just throw PHP into your blog post like this, and the code filter will say, oh, this is code, and then format it as code. That's probably a really dumb thing in hindsight, but that's the way it is. So a lot of my old blog posts have little code snippets that don't have a code tag or anything, and it's just PHP. So I'm going to need to figure out a way to handle that. Global redirect, I don't think any of those features will be missing from just using core, and that's about it. So this site's in pretty good shape. Every site's going to be a little different. If your site's more complex, or if you have a bunch of custom modules too, I don't think there's any custom modules on this site. Most sites I make, there's at least 1 or 2 custom modules, and you would need to upgrade those modules, of course, to be able to use them in Drupal 8, and that process can be complicated as well. But this site doesn't, and this site's pretty simple and has most of its modules have an upgrade path. And initially, I'm not going to install any of those modules because I'm going to first try to migrate the content and core configuration, and then we'll see what else we need from there. So we're in pretty good shape. I'm going to go back to the home page on this site. And I'm going to go over here, and we're 30 minutes in today, 30 minutes to go. Let's see how far we can go with getting the migration done, the initial migration. Let me also check. I haven't made any changes to my code base, have I? Git status. So the code base is still the same. And it looks like I'll need to get these 3 modules. So let me open these 3 module pages. Migrate upgrade, migrate plus, and migrate tools. So I'll grab this. It says for Drupal 8.2.x and above. So I'll do that. So I'm going to add these 3 modules. So composer required Drupal migrate upgrade 3, and then migrate plus. It looks like you just, oh, here. Let's see. This is interesting. Sometimes things get a little confusing. So this is only for 8.2.x. This is for 8.3, but not 9. And 8.5x is for readiness for 9. Interesting. Oh, somebody mentioned earlier that module page thing that I had was module filter. Yes, that's exactly what it is. But let's see, 5.x. So I'm guessing that I would want to use, well, that's an RC. This one was released relatively recently, so I'm guessing maybe 4.2 is the way to go. But it says Drupal 8.3.x. I'm guessing that means any version after Drupal 8.3.x, but you know, documentation is always fun. So we're going to try 8.x.-4.2 just because that seems like it's going to be the most stable version. It looks like the 5.x branch is focused on 9.x readiness, which we're not going to 9.x yet. We will at some point, but I'm going to want to grab this. So I'm going to go to that page to get the composer require statement here, migrate plus. So I'm going to get that module and then migrate tools. All right, so here's more complicated fun. So 4 beta 2 plus is for this, and Drush 9. So yeah, we definitely want 4.x. That's funny. It's like, okay. We'll grab that. Drupal migrate tools 4.5. All right, so we need those 3 according to this documentation page. So I'm using Composer to install those. Composer is going to eat up the remaining like 1% of CPU that's available. And upgrade to a ThinkPad. So I actually have a Dell XPS 13 over here too. And I've been thinking about doing development work on it. And I've looked into a couple other models too. The problem is, like, I like having a super portable laptop. I have a 13-inch MacBook Pro. That's what I'm streaming this on, and it's like at the higher end of what I would consider being really portable for me. I used to have a MacBook Air, and I loved how light it was and how portable. And there's always a trade-off there, because the lighter and more portable it is, the less heat sink, the less fan, the smaller drive, all that stuff. Everything is smaller and slower. So I don't want to go any bigger than that. And I know some people are like, oh, we'll just get this whatever. I forget what the System 76, I think, is the one that almost everybody that I talk to that has the same issue as I do. They're like, oh, just get a System 76. It's like, I don't want to carry around a 15-pound laptop that has like 7 giant fans blowing on me. I just want a small laptop. So the other option that I've considered is getting a desktop computer for my workshop down here, and then using the laptop for my personal work. We'll see. Oh, that's fun. Okay, what is the... So this happens relatively frequently, especially nowadays that something in Drupal core seems to have had a new dependency added that requires more space, more RAM. And if you look at that many bytes in megabytes, that's about 1.5 gigs, which is Composer's default. So if I look for Composer memory limit, I want to increase the Composer memory limit. I want to say equals -1. That means don't use the memory limit at all. Just give me all the RAM you got. It'll probably like kill the stream or something, gobble up all the RAM on the computer. But this started happening a couple weeks ago with some of my Drupal projects. I don't know exactly what happened, and I haven't had time to look into it. But I think something in Drupal core, something it relies on, had a new dependency added that probably adds to the dependency tree that requires Composer to use even more RAM. So if you ever have a problem like that, this is the quick fix. The better fix is to do a better job of keeping dependency trees in check. But with a project like Drupal, that might be impossible at this point. So we're letting Composer use as much RAM as it wants, and it'll do its thing. Daniel's getting an XPS 13. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing for me is, and this is the reason why I still use a Mac, is everything kind of just works until it doesn't sometimes, and usually that's just a problem of computer technology. Things don't work sometimes, but things just work, and I have my workflows and things. It all works out as well as I need them to most of the time, so why change it too much? But I do have some fun with development environments sometimes. I came close to switching to Fedora a couple years ago, but as I said last stream, since I do enough video and photo and media work, I still need either Windows or Mac, and it would be a little hard to switch to. Oh, what is this? That's annoying. That's probably a file permissions issue. So sometimes this will happen too, where Drupal installer creates a file and creates it with permissions that are locked down so your own user can't change it. So that's in web sites default default.services.yaml. Let's see what this file's permissions are. I can read and write. What about the default folder? Read only. Let's make it read and write. And the sites folder, I should be able to read and write that. All right. And if you're on a different type of system, you can always say ls-lah web sites default, and it'll show you the permissions. So now it shows that folder I have read, write, and execute, and the parent of it, read, write, and execute. I have read and write for the services file. So now let's try this again. This is life with Composer. You run a command 3 or 4 times most of the time before you actually get it to finish. Hopefully the stream is still working okay. It looks like every once in a while I'm seeing a little buffering thing in my live stream monitor window. And now I see the same buffering thing over on my iPad, so I know there was some issue there, probably when Composer gobbled up the rest of the RAM that was available. While it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and put away the aroma dough that I was using earlier. If anybody watching this has a kid with a severe gluten allergy, this stuff is pretty nice. It's a little expensive, but we found it online. I think you can even get it on Amazon, but I think it's made by a small company or something. And they make it in many colors, and it lasts a year or so before it starts getting kind of nasty. So every year we buy some for the kids for birthday or Christmas or something. And it feels pretty close to the same as Play-Doh. Bye-bye Drupal 6, 7, 8 in dough form. Okay, looks like that finished. All right, we finally have, I'm going to say get status and make sure we got some changes. Get diff composer.json. So we got those 3 new modules. Yay, they're finally here. Only took 10 minutes. So now I'm going to enable these modules. So I'm going to go ahead and do that through the UI, just to show you where that is. So you could also use Drush here, but I'll do it in the Drupal UI. Or not if it blows up again. I'm also going to add these files, get status, and get commit them. Added, what are the 3 modules? Migrate, upgrade, migrate plus, whoops. Plus and migrate tools modules, and push those up. So now we have those modules as part of our code base. And I'm going to go to the extend page where you enable modules. And this page is going to load every module on the system, which takes a little time. And I'm also going to add to the README file migrating content with a to-do, since that's what we're going to work on today, and we're going to need to be able to do this over and over again. So now on the modules page, I'm going to find those migrate modules. Where are they? Here we are, migrate. Those are examples. Oh, here we go, migration. Drupal upgrade, Drush support for Drupal upgrades, migrate Drupal. I don't need the UI since I'm going to use Drush, migrate plus, and migrate tools. All right, install those. Let's see how that goes. So I've installed those modules. The next step will be Drush migrate status. Let's see what this does once this is finished installing. I'm actually going to I'm going to make a new tab here. I'm going to say docker ps to see what container is running. And jeffgallion.com latest. So this is the container that's running this. I'm going to go into that. So I have a command called denter, which is basically docker exec-it and then the container name and bash. So I'm going to run denter that container. That'll take me inside. So I'm in here and I say vendor Drush status. Just check if Drush is working. It is, but it's killing the CPU again. I can see my videos getting a little choppy. It works sometimes, so that's good. Okay, so Drush is working. And then once this is finished, we'll run Drush migrate status. Okay, so it says those modules have been enabled. And I'm going to run Drush migrate status, and it should show us that nothing's running or happening. We'll see. I'm also going to see for next time we do the stream next week, if there's any way I can get this YouTube video to not use so much. I'm seeing that the YouTube streaming console thing is using a lot of resources as well with all its graphs and charts and things. All right, but that's the way that Google does things. They make Chrome, and Chrome eats up all of your RAM and CPU. So it looks like there's a couple things here. D6 upload field and user picture field. But I don't know where it's getting this stuff from. I guess those are example migrations or something. So let's see. It's going to want migrate, upgrade, legacy DB URL. So I'm going to configure a connection to the old database. I don't know if this is going to work or not inside of Docker. And if it doesn't, I might need to do a little work on the local environment or figure out a way to add the other database to my new site. But I want to, so there's a databases array. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look in my settings file, settings.php, and databases. That might be at the bottom of this file. So this is where you define all the databases on your site. And what I want to do is add a connection to the other database, my Drupal 7 database, so that I can see the content on it. And I'd rather do it here than define, like you can type in this information here, but then you're typing in passwords for databases on the command line, and that's never a very good idea. And Candy Bar, no, not every computer unfortunately has 64 gigs. This one has what, 16 or something? Yeah, 16, so it's not too terrible, but yeah, you notice I'm using Safari. It's because Chrome would always be gobbling up twice as much RAM for the same amount of tabs being open. So this is the default database connection. I'm going to add another one, and I forget how this works. Is it default? No. Drupal databases settings.php database configuration. I want to add another one called like Drupal 7 or Legacy or something like that. Connection key target. So this is the default. The unique identifier must be unique. A target. Okay, so that's like for primary replication. All right, so I'm going to make a second one called, let me make sure this is all working. Drupal 7 default is the target because that'll be the master primary database, and there's only one. I don't have replication set up locally. And I think the username, I usually set things to Drupal for local development, but the only difference is port is 3307. And this is where I don't know if it's going to work inside of Docker because of Docker's networking. So I'm going to try localhost. I don't think that's going to work. Overwrite this file. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and see what happens here with drush migrate upgrade. Migrate upgrade, it'll probably fail. Legacy DB key equals, we call that Drupal 7. And I don't have a database prefix. Legacy root is, whoops, I need a space there. Legacy root is https://www.jeffgeerling.com with no slash, it looks like. And we'll just do the configuration only for now. Okay, we'll see what that does. Like I said, I don't think that works because localhost inside of the Docker container might not see port 3307 across the Docker network. Well, that's funny. Command migrate upgrade is not defined. The module's installed. Drupal upgrade, that's the one that provides the commands, I think, right? Drush support. That's the migrate upgrade module. Maybe I need to clear Drush's cache. Drush, is it Drush CR? Something like that. Clear Drush cache. Cache rebuild, that's for Drupal. I think that clears the cache. Sometimes if Drush doesn't pick up a new command that's available, then you have to clear its caches. And maybe I'm missing something here, but I installed the module, the migrate upgrade module, and this command should be defined. Cache rebuild is of course going to be slow. Everything's going to be slow right now. Yeah, Drush CR. Okay, so cache rebuild complete. Let's try running that command again. And boy, is this slow when I'm streaming. Usually these commands take like 3 to 5 seconds. Here it's not even running. It took like 10 seconds just to find that it's not defined. I also wonder, no such file. So yeah, it's not connecting to the database here. Let me see. I wonder if I have MySQL installed on here. MySQL-u Drupal-h Drupal. I'm just going to try connecting from this container to the database that's running on a different container on a different network, a different Docker local network. -h localhost. The database is Drupal-p Drupal. No, that's not how I'm doing it. 127.0.0.1. Okay, so it can't see that. Let's see. Quick query on Google, Docker connect to another container. Maybe another thing I can check is Docker PS. I might be able to connect by the host name, which this one would be Drupal 7. So let's try that. Drupal 7. Unknown host Drupal 7. That didn't work so well. Because see, it's running on, I can connect to it from here. So if I use SQL Pro for a little GUI for database work, and I have the connection set up here, and it's connecting on port 3307. So I can see the database here. And that's connecting, I think, what was that, just on localhost or 127.0.0.1, but Docker networking can befuddle me. Let's check this out really quick. Yeah, someone's mentioning you can just do drush and with nothing else, and it'll give you all the commands available. Yeah, and in this case, I just wanted to run migrate upgrade, and it looks like the problem was that the cache rebuild was, the drush cache had to be rebuilt, and then it picked up the command. Often it doesn't need to do that, but sometimes it doesn't pick up a new command. I don't know. This might be a good point to pause, and because we only got 5 minutes left, and I want to make sure that there's an easy way for us to connect from this container right here to this container right here. And with Docker's networking model, that is a little harder than it should be. Let me just try container ID. I don't think that that'll work either. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that doesn't do anything. And another option that I could do, so I'm going to create a new connection here for Jeff Geerling, local D8, host 127.0.0.1, username Drupal 3306. So this is going to connect to this database, hopefully. And I'm going to see if I can create a database. Drupal 7 and UTF-8 MB4. Another quick note on databases in Drupal. UTF-8 was kind of like the long-standing standard for databases in Drupal 5, 6, I don't know about 4. Back then it might have been something else. But if you want to allow emoji or anything like that, and you're not using this, then you're going to have problems. So if you're ever creating a new database or migrating or anything like that, make sure you use UTF-8 MB4 so that you don't have weird character encoding issues. So I'm going to add this database. Yeah, I couldn't do that. Well, you know what? There's 4 minutes left, and I think what we'll do is between now and next week's session, I will look into, yeah, Daniel's saying you probably need to add the port, and I did over here, so it's 3307. Oh, you know what? You're right. Let me just check this out again. I didn't specify the port. And how do you do that? MySQL help. What do you do? Port -p capital or -- port. Okay, let's try this. -- port 3307. Yeah, couldn't find Drupal 7. So that's the problem here is that it's not inside of this Docker container. It can't see the other Docker container. And I'll have that figured out by next week. I'm sure there's something simple that I'm missing that I can connect the two together, even though they're in different Docker Compose files. But I really just want to see this one from here, and I'll have that figured out next time. But the main thing that I'm trying to do, which we'll get into next week, is define the second database connection in my settings.php file. That way, Drupal 8 will see its own database, Drupal 8, and it can also see the Drupal 7 database. Now, if you want to go pro level, another thing that you could do is you could even point this at a production database and have a read-only user account on that production database that Drupal 8 can see. So you're pulling straight from production. Now, ideally, what you'd do, and this is what I did for the last major Drupal 8 site that I did a migration for, is I had a replica, like a read replica of the database, of the production database, that had a read-only user account that Drupal 8 could see at all times, and it would do that. This was back in Drupal 8.1, I think, before Migrate was even like stable. But we got it done, and it worked, and it was cool because it was always pulling down the latest production data. Unfortunately for my site, I don't, well, for the purposes of this live migration, I don't want to do anything that could risk giving any passwords or connection details out through the live stream, since I would be scrambling to fix whatever. Of the people watching the stream right now, I don't think any of you would try hacking me, but you never know, and better safe than sorry. So I'm going to be doing it off of a backup, a dumped and restored database locally. So I'll have that figured out by next time. And as we only have a minute or so left, I'm going to wrap it up today and remind people that if you want to keep seeing these, you can click, it should be right below me, the subscribe button. I think it's right below me, somewhere below me. And you can be notified when there's new streaming episodes. And as I put in the blog post, we can continue to fail together, as we have today, failing to even connect to the database. But this is life as a Drupal developer. This is life as a programmer, life as any kind of developer, really. You learn by failing, and I'm sure we're going to quickly see that there's some easy way to connect from one container to the other. But subscribe. Check out the, you can rewatch this video. It'll be up in an hour or so, or probably less than an hour after YouTube converts it. And we'll keep moving along next week and hopefully get the initial migration finished. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week. Let me make sure. So I'm going to go over to my streaming software. I'm trying to make sure that this all goes the right way with YouTube and the connections and all that. And as this is only the second stream, YouTube is showing a lot of lag here. So I'm going to stop the streaming in my connection software, and we'll see what happens. hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you on Tuesday.